In the middle of Ukraine's strictly controlled military border zone, an unprecedented intervention is moving into the heart of the Danube River Delta. Not warships or industrial dredging equipment. On the deck of a barge are 7 giant water buffalo-ton-heavy biological machines with horns ready for an ecological restoration campaign. Their target is Ermakov Island, a 3,500-hectare strip of land suffering severe degradation inside a concrete isolation structure from the previous century. For decades, reinforced dike systems completely blocked the flow of water, turning this place into a severely degraded area where life was overwhelmed beneath dense walls of reed and oxygen levels were nearly zero. Using a few individual animals to solve the legacy of a great engineering project from an old era sounds like a risky experiment. And yet, while million-dollar technology projects have been completely ineffective, this herd of animals is carrying out a spectacular ecological transformation. Why did those solid dikes become the very agents destroying this island? And what ecological crisis is unfolding behind those dense walls of invasive reeds? In the Danube Delta, dissolved oxygen levels once dropped sharply below 2 milligrams per liter. Surface coverage by a single plant species reached 80 to 100%, completely cutting off the food chain from its foundation. Engineers in the previous century built a series of massive reinforced concrete ring dikes around Ermakov Island, draining all water across 135 square miles to turn a biodiverse wetland into dry agricultural fields. The seasonal hydrological rhythm, the key factor maintaining biodiversity, was completely broken. Flooding frequency fell by more than 50%, while water levels changed by only about 4 inches compared with natural fluctuations of up to 3.3 feet in nearby areas. When agricultural cultivation failed, the island was abandoned. Nature did not regain balance by itself. The absence of flowing water created a perfect environment for a native invasive plant species, Phragmites australis reeds. They grew aggressively, reaching up to 3 meters tall and producing from 4 to 40 tons of biomass per acre each year. This dense reed wall blocked 70 to 95% of sunlight from reaching the water surface. Aquatic plants below declined and stopped producing oxygen. As the massive reed biomass decomposed, it continued consuming the small amount of oxygen that remained. Migratory bird numbers dropped by 20 to 50% because landing grounds and shallow mudflats were lost, while aquatic insects lost 30 to 70% of their biomass. Traditional intervention methods were completely ineffective. If industrial mowing machines were used, the 3-meter deep root system would remain intact underground and regrow even faster. If herbicides were used across a wide area, the chemicals would seep into freshwater sources, seriously damaging efforts to conserve the food web. Mechanical intervention through thousands of hours of excavator operation or canal dredging consumed enormous budgets but only addressed the surface symptoms of the imbalance. When industrial machinery reached its limits, scientists decided to abandon mechanical methods. They introduced into the ecosystem a massive biological engineering force to control this plant wall from the inside. An adult water buffalo weighs from 600 to 1,000 pounds and consumes about 55 to 90 pounds of raw plant biomass each day. Instead of trying to create a new ecosystem with mechanical technology, researchers decided to restore the natural physical processes that had been interrupted. Before this biological force was introduced, the mechanical infrastructure had to be removed. To open the way, the first section of concrete dike was deliberately dismantled. A large-scale intervention campaign removed an additional 656 to 984 feet of dike. This move immediately allowed Danube River water to flood back onto the island, expanding the water surface area by 1.5 to 2 times within a short period. Seasonal water level changes returned, carrying sediments and essential minerals with them. But water is only the solvent. The ecosystem needed a mechanical force to restructure the surface. In May of 2019, the first 7 water buffalo made a journey of more than 620 miles from the Tisza River basin, landing directly in the core zone of the island. These are descendants of the water buffalo that once lived in Europe during the Pleistocene, possessing the ability to digest the toughest fibrous plants. They were released completely freely across 8,650 acres. There was no routine medical intervention, no additional artificial food supply, and no directional fencing. What do you think about this approach? Is freely releasing a herd of giant animals with immense physical power into an extremely sensitive and unbalanced ecosystem a risky ecological experiment or a brilliant move by modern science? Leave your opinion in the comment section. The behavior of the buffalo herd in the very first days will give us an answer completely opposite to conventional engineering thinking. The impact density of the buffalo herd is maintained at an extremely low level, only about 0.002 individuals per acre. But each individual operates like a perfect machine for plowing and shaping landforms. From the very first days after landing, the mechanical impact of the 7 pioneer individuals immediately created ecological disturbance equivalent to a heavy mechanized team, but operating with absolute precision and completely immune to the risk of industrial chemical leaks. With the herd growing to 17 individuals, the total amount of vegetation consumed reaches 165 to 275 tons of biomass each year. However, the real power does not lie in the amount they eat, but in the way they intervene in the terrain. Water buffalo do not graze systematically like lawn mowers. They graze unevenly, bite off young reed shoots, trample old stems, and leave behind interwoven patches of intact vegetation. This behavior breaks the 100% coverage layer of reeds, opening clear gaps that allow sunlight to reach the water surface and muddy ground. Their mechanism of shaping microhabitats is the real key to changing the situation. Water buffalo have a constant need to wallow in mud to regulate body temperature and remove parasites. Under a weight of up to half a ton, every roll of their bodies cuts through the tangled reed root mat, compresses the mud layer, and creates depressions ranging from 100 to 500 square feet. Dozens of these mud wallows function like miniature hydrological oases. During the dry season, when most of the island dries out, these mud pits still retain water, maintain temperatures warmer than the surrounding environment, and become exclusive survival nurseries for amphibians, larvae, and small fish. Besides their physical impact, the buffalo herd is also an automatic fertilizer machine. More than 100 tons of organic waste each year, rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, is spread across hundreds of acres, directly triggering an explosion of microbial and insect populations. At the same time, tens of thousands of seeds from more than 200 plant species cling to their mud-caked fur and pass through their digestive systems, being scattered across the island and breaking the monopoly of a single species. These subtle biological interventions gradually accumulate, leading to an irreversible structural transformation on a landscape scale. But does this powerful physical disturbance truly save the wetland, or does it only bring a state of loss of control? The answer only becomes truly clear when we extract data directly from space. After 5 years, satellite data confirmed a macro-level transformation. In the area where the buffalo herd operated, reed cover dropped from 100% to a balanced level of 50 to 70%. The decline of the dominant reed biomass gave way to a 40% increase in the landscape heterogeneity index. The island was no longer a thick, uniform green surface. Instead, it transformed into a complex mosaic landscape, a multi-layered network consisting of short grasslands, sparse reed strips, exposed mudflats, and a series of interconnected shallow water channels. The interweaving of these terrain forms release dissolved oxygen in the water, pushing this indicator up to the safe threshold of 4 to 6 milligrams per liter, restoring the breathing capacity of the aquatic system. The domino chain of revival began from the bottom. Insects increased by 30 to 70% in biomass, causing the density of small fish breeding in shallow water to double. Insects and fish are the foundational biomass that pulled back the return of higher-level predator populations. The density of waterbird species, including rare species such as Dalmatian pelicans, crested ibises, and white-tailed eagles, increased by 20 to 50% compared with control areas without water buffalo intervention. The open mudflats created clear visibility that helped migratory birds hunt more easily and establish landing sites. Not stopping at species diversity, this wetland ecosystem itself also restored the function of a massive carbon sink. The anaerobic decomposition of plants beneath shallow water helps isolate large amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, a priceless side effect in the current global context. Nature has proven its astonishing ability to heal itself when physical processes are restarted correctly. However, the fragility of this newly established balance creates a challenging governance problem for the future, because behind the inspiring documentary footage, a complex battle of economic interests is still quietly smoldering, waiting to unfold. The ecological carrying capacity of the island for the water buffalo population is now being strictly maintained at a safe level of about 10 to 25%. No biological solution is absolutely perfect, and the success of this campaign is hiding long-term ecological and climatological risks. Using wild animals to shape landscapes requires an extremely narrow tolerance calculation. The greatest risk comes from the herd's own natural reproductive instinct. With the addition of 6 more females to expand the gene pool, the population could increase at a rate of 20 to 40% in the next cycles. If the density exceeds the tolerance threshold of the vegetation, concentrated grazing pressure, or overgrazing, will reverse every achievement that has been made. The shallow mudflats could be trampled until they lose their ability to hold water, and bottom vegetation could be broken before it has time to recover, turning the ecosystem back into a degraded and eroding land. In addition, regional climate models project that the Danube Delta will face a temperature increase of 2.7 to 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit by mid-century, bringing prolonged droughts and high-level fluctuations in water levels. If the amount of water lost through evaporation exceeds the amount of river water replenishing it, the microhabitats will dry out completely. Many media outlets are praising this model as an absolute solution, but in reality, there are still significant biological risks that are rarely mentioned. Maintaining a large, freely moving herd in a sensitive border area increases the risk of cross-infection of pathogens into local livestock herds. This requires a continuous and costly health monitoring system, and if it is interrupted, it could lead to damage across the entire livestock industry in the region. Another equally complex challenge comes from macro-level conflicts of interest in border regions. Independent investigative analyses extracted from satellite imagery and recent warning reports from WWF Romania have pointed to a worrying reality. More than 6,200 acres of adjacent wetland in the Mahmudia and Karasuhat areas are at risk of being commercialized and drained once again to make room for agricultural equipment. The demand to convert water resources for large-scale production projects continues to directly threaten the continuity of the entire hydrological basin. The recovering ecosystem lies on a sensitive line between long-term conservation pressure and short-term exploitation demands. Recognizing these limits will establish a new foundation for how humans interact with the global environment. The macro-level revival on this 135-square-mile island is not only a local campaign to protect a bird, species, or a strip of reeds. This is a complete prototype illustrating how humans are reshaping the logic of intervention on a planetary scale. For centuries, industrial civilization has overused mechanical and chemical power to overcome ecological limits, forcing nature to operate along a linear trajectory in order to increase production. But the consequence left behind is the severe decline of hydrological cycles and food webs. The project of using large organisms as landscape-shaping machines has proven a new principle. The optimal solution for large-scale damage is not adding more control technology, but knowing when to dismantle artificial barriers in order to release natural systems that have been established through millions of years of evolution. Water buffalo, like other semi-wild hoofed animals, are not aware that they are carrying out a conservation campaign. They simply live according to their biological instincts. Humans play the role of strategic architects, creating a suitable hydrological environment and handing the detailed operation back to natural biological systems. In the future of environmental intervention campaigns, technology does not disappear. Satellites and thermal cameras still continuously monitor every smallest change in biomass. But human capability is now used not to control the power of nature, but to protect the space that allows nature to carry out its own recovery process. If this story brings you a valuable perspective, hit like and share so the algorithm can spread the message. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next in-depth analyses of large-scale intervention projects that are reshaping our planet every day.